All right. Top 7 books of 2023. I always talk too much, so let's just get on with it and not ramble about it, okay? Because I always talk too much. So, all right. So, let's do honourable mentions first of all. So, honourable mentions, just some quick honourable mentions. I read The Godfather. It was a cool world. There were some cool, intense scenes, but I also felt like there were some completely pointless scenes, and the ending wasn't as tense as the other scenes. So yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag, but it was still very good, and the characters were good, and they were part of their universe went along in a clockwork way. So I kind of liked that. I want to mention Project Hail Mary, science fiction thing. It was, oh my goodness. Okay. It was the most cringily written American male writing. It was so cringe, so American, so masculinely written. All of the characters were so particularly the female characters are really, really badly written because of the whole. So it wasn't great, but it was worth it for this one character. And even then, they were still constructed in an awkward way, but it's still worth it for that. We liked it for that. So that's a funny mixed bag thing. So yeah. And then I also want to mention Pirate Borg. So that's not actually a novel. It's not actually a book. It's actually an RPG. It's actually a game. But just the effort that's gone into this, how it's really nicely laid out, the artwork, the way it sets itself up. Like, I'm putting this on my book list because if you like pirates and you want to come to this as if you're reading it as a book, I do think you could really do that because just how it sets itself up and stuff like that. So yeah, honourable mention for that. Okay. So, number 7, we start at number 7, top 7 book. Number 7 is The Scottish Boy. It's medieval knights setting. It is the writer has a slightly modern tone to their writing, which slightly undermines the setting just a little bit. But overall, I really did enjoy this. It's the relationship between the characters, but basically what you have to know is basically they just end up having a lot of sex, right? And it's really like, oh, okay, are we doing this again? Like, you turn the page, like, oh my God, we're doing this again. Really? We're doing this again, right? So they kept doing this, right? But actually, it wasn't actually that bad. It was actually the book was overall quite cool and stuff like that. Towards the end, it really slowed down and got kind of boring. And there was this part that was kind of boring. The book's actually quite long, quite thick. Yeah. I think it really could have been edited down towards the end. It got kind of boring. So it was funny because the whole time you're like, oh my gosh, are we doing this again? And then towards the end, it's like, get back to the sex. Basically, because it was kind of got a bit boring. So it is good. But there's also things that kind of hold it back from being, complete, I suppose. So that. Okay, all right. Number 6 is Sabriel. This is the first entry in the series, and it had some really evocative fantasy and magic, like how the world works and stuff like that. I don't actually have much to say about it, other than I think that it was a good entry into this sort of young adult fantasy genre, and I mean I would just want to read more to have a completer viewpoint of it. So that's a good thing because it's good, basically. I feel like a lot happened. It's funny because normally I complain about if there's a long series and I have to read a long series of things just to get the full story. But I feel like he put a lot in that maybe could have happened in later stories, really. But in terms of just getting a series going for this particular genre, particularly when this genre now, because he wrote this a while ago now, particularly this genre now is way oversaturated with just young adult fantasy. In terms of like it being way oversaturated, looking back to this book, which was written, a while ago, this is a great entry in that thing. So yes, good. Okay. All right. Number 5 is The Grapes of Wrath. John Steinbeck. I really like him. I respect him. He is an absolute master of truth in this book. I mean, how old is this book now? The struggle and the hate that he writes about in this book is literally still going on today, but the topic is different. I learned from this book that humans must have one continuous hate, and how people think about hatred and how people have rage. They keep changing the topic of the rage, and it feels like it's a new rage. But I realize from how he wrote this and how things still happen in our modern day, that there must only be one continuous hate that just seeps into a new topic or something like that. Yeah, he is an absolute master of truth, and how he has his characters move through that, and how I won't talk about the ending, but the ending is all about what, your choice as to whether the human spirit can continue on or not. That's up to you to choose when you get to the end of a book. So yeah, he is an absolute master of that. The only thing is, there were interim chapters between each chapter, and I feel that slowed the story down. Some of those interim chapters were definitely not as interesting, and other times those interim chapters actually were more interesting and said things that I think he should just put into the main story and not in the interim chapter. So that's a slight criticism. But other than that, yeah, he's very, very skilled. He's very, very skilled, basically. So number four is Never Let Me Go. Yes, he's a very good writer. He writes very well. This book is an excellent representation and an excellent showcase of what it is like to grow up, particularly in England, particularly at school, particularly in the era that he's writing at. These characters and their emotions and how I felt while I was reading it was so, memorable and realistic and stuff like that. It's like everything that happened has kind of happened to me, and also happened to my friends growing up. I know all of those events, and he wrote those so realistically. This is a book about the emotion of the characters growing up, basically. A lot of people lump this and say that it's a science fiction book. If you're reading this as suppose you're going to read top 100 sci-fi books of all time, this is not a science fiction book. This is a book set in an alternate reality to ours, which has some science fiction elements. That's completely the backdrop. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, I would even go and say that the actual plot and the actual world that they interact with in that plot, in a way, is a bit defeatist, and it's a bit kind of pointless as well. In a way, it's almost a bit disappointing. What it actually is the characters' emotions, how they interact with each other, and how that relates to the reader. And again, like I say, particularly growing up in a school in England, in that era, which is the same era that I kind of, was in England and growing up in school and stuff like that. Yeah, it definitely really, really relates. Okay, number 3 is the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. So this is really, really good. So this is it's actually a very long series. I'm just the first book. I'm just reading the first book here. This is Chinese. So basically, this is a love story, not a romance, okay? That's the important distinction here. This is a love story, not a romance. And because it's Chinese, and because you can't be gay in China, how she has written these characters is so subtle, right? And the thing is, because she's lent into the subtlety, it's so well done. It is stunning how well done this is. When when one of the characters touches one of the other characters on the shoulder, you feel the electricity of them together, just in such a subtle way. It's so cleverly done. You'd think that it would be hidden and almost brushed under the carpet because of having to write it from how she's having to write it, but it's not like that. She completely goes for the subtlety of it, and it just is absolutely amazing, how they are and stuff. I love the characters. One of the characters is very, very quiet, very intellectual, and doesn't really say anything. And in a way that kind of comes off as grumpy, which is very funny. He's almost untouchable in that way because he's so quiet and stuff. The other character is he's really, really sassy and really, really bossy, which is really funny because he's exactly my kind of character. And so it's funny because going into it, how the subtlety of it is set up. That he's exactly the kind of character to get at the quiet guy, right? That, but quiet guy's not going to let on that that's going to happen, right? Because it's all done subtly. So it's really, really it's really, really entertaining. On top of that, the whole thing is a sort of a magical supernatural mystery, and it's Chinese magic, so it's a unique type of magic called cultivation. If you've not seen any cultivation stuff, then it's its own genre, basically. It's not Western magic, So it's got its own cool little thing as well going along with it. So yeah, it's really good. The only thing is, and this is entirely my fault, but basically a lot of the Chinese names and stuff can be very confusing at first, basically, and obviously that's entirely my fault because I'm not Chinese. I don't know all that stuff, right? But yeah, so at first, like, it's kind of like, who is this character again? What is happening again? Where have we gone again? But that's not the writer's fault at all. This has been translated. And yeah, of course, that's the thing to say, is that there's a lot of translations of this. Some of the translations, including the official translation, like in the book, some of the translations are slightly off, just slightly. And that reduces it a little bit. But, I mean, it's so amazing what she's managed to write that it can even go through translation and still the power of them can come through. So, yeah, really, really good. All right, number two. And I can't believe I'm putting this at number 2, actually. I can't believe I'm putting this at number 2 because it was so dumb, right? It was so stupid. Yeah, it's so stupid. So basically, Seven Deadly Wonders, right? So basically, this is the dumbest thing. This is possibly the dumbest thing I've ever read, right? So it's Indiana Jones, basically. It's a treasure hunting, going to pyramids and setting off traps. It's that thing, right? It's that. But the whole book is that. It's just non-stop. It just doesn't stop. And it is so over the top. It's so ridiculous. Like, just when you think it couldn't get more stupidly over the top, yeah, it gets more stupidly over the top, right? So it's so stupid. I was reading it's like, this is the most dumbest, the ridiculous thing I've ever read, right? But it's so enjoyable, right? It's so stupid, but it doesn't matter because the story of it, it's not even really a story because it's so dumb, yeah? But just the experience of it, it's so fun. I mean, yeah, I guess a lot of it might be one-dimensional or two-dimensional just because of how it is, you could say, quote-unquote, badly written. You could say it's badly written, yeah. But just like the experience is like, I wanted to keep going back to this book to see what was going to happen next. What stupid thing was going to happen next, you know? And yes, it's unbelievable. And yes, it's like idiotic in a way. But yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? You're supposed to want to keep coming back to a book and coming back to experience the story, aren't you? You know? So that is my number 2. It's not as good as my number 3, yeah? It's definitely not as good as that. But just in terms of how I'm experiencing an adventure and a story, yes. And also, I read this as a palate cleanser after my number 1, which I'll talk about in a minute. I read it as a palate cleanser. And so this is Seven Deadly Wonders. And then the next book is the 6 Sacred Stones, I think. And then it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, you know, it goes through that. So this is a great series to have as a palate cleanser between more heavier books anyway. So yeah, it just fills its role perfectly. So yeah, I'm putting it at number 2, okay? Okay, number one. So number 1 is These Violent Delights. This book was amazing. Basically, this is like my new favorite book now. It's like in my top 10 favorite books of all time. Absolutely amazing book. Just the emotion of which this is written. Oh my goodness, is so like good. It's almost overwhelming. Like I didn't want to read too much at a time because it's almost overwhelming how powerful the emotion between the characters. One of the characters is clearly very autistic and very self-loathing. And this is set before autism was even a thing. And so their self-loathing and just how they are as a character is just so powerful when compared to the other character who is so cocky and so confident and so an important character. What's clever about that is and any other book would just stop there. But this doesn't, because the point of his self-confidence and his cockiness is actually an entirely fake presentation and a fake mask that he wears because he also has his own self-loathing and hatred of his own life and situation and stuff like that. And so they come together, and so the romance between those two is so powerful and so passionate and so destructive because they desperately need each other in that way. So it just reduces everything down to a raw human passion and a need for each other. It's so cleverly done. It's so well done. And the amount of hatred that they have, but also the tenderness that they have, and all of that wrapped up in the emotion of how they are and how they interact and how you see it from their perspective and stuff like that. Oh, it's just such a good book. Yeah, it's just so good. It's so stupidly good. Yeah. The only thing, so I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10, so high. There's just a few small things. One is that autistic characters complaining. There's a chapter or two where that goes on just a teeny tiny bit too long. Just a teeny, very small bit too long. Just a little bit. I would like that cut out. And also the opening scene completely put me off before I even started reading the book, completely put me off. And I understand why the setup of that scene is necessary. I really do. But just be aware that the scene may put you off at first. but to get that out the way and then to just get on with the book, oh my goodness. Yeah, basically amazing book. And I think we're done. With top list, okay? That's it. Top 7 books of 2023. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your top books of 2023 are. And yes, that's it, isn't it? Okay, we're done. Okay, bye-bye.